They say the steady beeping of hospital machines is meant to comfort. To me, it was no lullaby. It was a countdown. Not to the surgery, not to the pain, but to the moment when I would finally stop caring. The nurse's shoes squeaked against the linoleum as she guided my bed toward the double doors. My gown stuck to my skin. The air around me was sharp, sterile, almost biting. My phone buzzed by my leg, flaring to life like a carnival in the dark. 27 missed calls. All from Mom, the woman who knew exactly where I was, yet chose cake and champagne over the daughter she raised. Her last text glowed back at me. "We need to talk." Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "I'm coming." Just 3 hollow words. The screen dimmed, leaving me staring at my own pale reflection. I wasn't crying. Not yet. I was too numb. But numbness, I've learned, is only grief biding its time, waiting for a crack to break through. Through the small square of glass in the doors, I caught a glimpse of blinding surgical light. My pulse surged. This was real. I was about to go under, not knowing if anyone would be there when I woke. And the truth? That stung less than it should have, because a dark, quiet part of me was already plotting what came next. The nurse leaned down, her tone almost casual. "You've got someone waiting outside?" I smiled. No one worth mentioning. The doors swung open. A rush of cold, metallic air swept in. The surgeon's masked face appeared above me. I closed my eyes, not to sleep, but to sear into memory the last image I'd seen. My sister's grin on Instagram, birthday balloons at her back, and my mother's hand, glass of wine raised in a toast. If silence could be sharpened into a blade, mine was ready. I let the anesthesia seep through me. Not a surrender, but a gathering of strength. They would remember this absence. They would feel it haunt every photograph, a shadow that no smile could erase. Because when I woke, I wasn't going to chase them. I wasn't going to explain. I wasn't going to forgive. Some debts sink too deep for words. And mine? It would be collected in full, quietly, but in the most public way imaginable. When I woke, the first thing I noticed was the light. Thin strands of morning sun leaking through the blinds, striping the sterile wall with bars of gold and shadow. The second thing was the silence. No flowers, no cards, no family. A nurse swept in, brisk and bright, carrying cheer like part of the uniform. "How's our fighter this morning?" she asked, flipping through my chart. I tried to answer, but my throat was dry. She poured water into a paper cup and held it out. As I drank, her eyes flicked toward the empty chair in the corner. "Your ride's coming soon?" I set the cup down. My voice came out low, flat. "No one's coming." Her expression softened in that way I hated, pity settling over me like a damp cloth smothering whatever dignity I had left. "Well," she said gently, "we'll make sure you get home safe." Home. The word landed wrong, heavy in my chest. Home wasn't just an address. It was the place they had proven they could abandon me without hesitation. My phone sat on the tray beside the bed, screen glowing with 53 unread messages. The missed calls had doubled overnight. The first was from Mom, stamped hours before my surgery ended. "We need to talk about the insurance money." Not, "How did it go?" Not, "I love you." Just business, as if my body were a ledger she had been waiting to balance. The rest blurred into noise, demands, excuses, fragments of dinner table drama from the night I wasn't there. Only one message from my sister stood out. "You could have rescheduled." I turned the phone face down. A tech appeared with a wheelchair, efficient and silent. As he rolled me down the corridor, past walls that smelled faintly of antiseptic and old paint, I caught my reflection in the mirrored elevator doors. Pale, hollow-eyed. But the line of my jaw told a truth the rest of me couldn't hide. I wasn't broken. I was decided. On the curb, I waited for the hospital shuttle. Families crowded the drive, minivans pulling up, car doors flung open, arms spilling out with blankets and soup promises and the kind of love you can't fake. When my ride arrived, it wasn't there to take me to them. It was there to take me to my apartment. Quiet, small, and, most importantly, mine. Inside, I collapsed onto the couch, the clock ticking like a metronome in the silence. My phone buzzed again, a video call from Mom. I let it ring until the screen went dark. Seconds later, a text blinked through. "Your uncle's asking about you. Should I tell him you're fine?" For a moment, my thumbs hovered over the keyboard. Almost. But then it hit me. This wasn't concern. This was performance. They wanted me to play my role in their theater of appearances, a daughter doing fine, a family that looked intact. The truth, as always, was meant to stay buried in our private vault of betrayals. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my laptop. Absence could be made loud. Silence could be sharpened into a mirror. By the time the sun slid down behind the blinds, the first step was already underway. They had erased me at my most vulnerable. Now the world would see exactly what that looked like. It started simply. Not just ignoring calls. That was too ordinary, too easy to dismiss. I became strategically absent. My social media went dark. No posts, no likes, no stories. In group chats, my name lingered gray and unread, a ghost at the edge of the conversation. I stopped showing up. No explanations, no excuses, for family dinners, birthdays, and casual weekend cookouts. And still, I watched. It's strange how people reveal themselves when they think you're gone. My sister filled her feed with photos from her birthday dinner, the one they all attended while I was being wheeled under surgical lights. Her captions sang of family love. Mom dotted the comments with strings of heart emojis, as though nothing had happened. That's when I knew. Disappearing wasn't enough. The truth had to be made visible. I started with Uncle Ray, the only relative who never forgot my birthday. I sent one simple message. "Did Mom tell you I had surgery?" His reply came fast, almost frantic. "No." "What surgery? When? Are you okay?" The ripple began. From there, I reached out to a cousin in Ohio, an aunt in Texas. Each time, the response was the same. Shock, disbelief, a simmering anger on my behalf. And I didn't accuse, didn't dramatize. I just laid out the facts. No, they didn't visit. Yes, they knew. No, they never called until it was over. The truth, stripped bare, is harder to bury than any accusation. A week later, Mom called again. Not to apologize, to scold. "You've been telling people things that make us look bad." I almost laughed. "I've been telling the truth." Her voice cut like glass. "You're making a scene." "No, Mom," I said, calm and quiet. "You made the scene. I'm just letting people watch the replay." She hung up. The next day, my sister texted, "Do you have to make this public? It's family business." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "You made it public the second you posted smiling birthday pictures while I was lying in a hospital bed." Silence followed. And with it, a realization. The guilt was gone. I wasn't that kid anymore, clawing for their approval. I was simply someone settling a debt. Someone new. Someone who had learned that silence can cut sharper than shouting, that absence can weigh heavier than presence. Family reputations are like porcelain, glossy, fragile, and doomed the moment a single crack forms. And I had no intention of gluing theirs back together. By month's end, the whispers had begun. Concerned relatives stopped dialing me and started calling them. Every attempt they made to patch the story only widened the crack, exactly as I intended. The escalation didn't begin with fireworks. It began with a photograph. A hospital wristband resting on my kitchen counter beside a cup of untouched tea. The caption: "Recovery is easier when you do it alone." Thankfully, I've had practice. No tags, no names, no accusations. Just silence, sharpened into suggestion. And in a family obsessed with appearances, suggestion was deadlier than attack. Within hours, the comments poured in. Old classmates, co-workers, distant cousins, all circling the same question: what happened? The vaguer I stayed, the more their speculation bloomed. By the next day, calls were coming from numbers I hadn't seen in years. One was my aunt from New Jersey. We'd spoken maybe twice in 5 years. She skipped pleasantries. "I just talked to your mom," she said. "She says you're exaggerating. You want to tell me what really happened?" So I told her. Dates, times, facts. No venom, no embroidery. Just the truth. Clean and bare. She was silent for a long moment, then finally said, low, "I'll call you back." Hours later, Mom's name lit up my screen. I let it fade. Instead, I posted again. This time, a photo of the untouched "Get Well Soon" card a coworker had left on my desk. The caption: "Sometimes the people you work with show up more than the people you share blood with." The comments doubled, sharper now. Sympathy, shock, disbelief. And as the tide rose, Mom's messages shifted. From "stop making us look bad" to "you're twisting the narrative" to "you're hurting the family." But hurt doesn't begin when the truth is told. Hurt begins with the act that made the truth unbearable in the first place. 3 weeks in, a message arrived from Mrs. Alvarez, a family friend who had known me since I was 5. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," she wrote. "I didn't know they left you there. I'll be having a word with your mother." That was the moment I realized this wasn't whispers anymore. This was a slow, controlled burn seeping through every branch of our social circle. By the time my sister's engagement party came around, people were already looking at them differently. I didn't attend, but the photos told me enough. Stiff smiles, fewer guests than usual, and comments under her posts that weren't dripping with the usual praise. A reputation doesn't shatter in one blow. It erodes grain by grain until there's nothing left to hold. And I was only just beginning. The sharper turn came with an invitation they never expected me to have. A local community group I'd volunteered with for years was hosting its annual charity gala. Normally, Mom would be front and center, shaking hands, curating smiles, parading her spotless facade. This year, she wasn't even on the guest list. I was. When I walked in, I made sure to look untouched by sickness. Sleek black dress, gold earrings, hair swept back. And I didn't arrive alone. Mrs. Alvarez held one arm, Uncle Ray the other. The very people who had been quietly calling Mom, demanding why she left her daughter in a hospital bed. It was an image she couldn't curate, a tableau she couldn't erase. Whispers rose like static. "I thought you were close with your mom," someone murmured. "We used to be," I replied, steady. Then I moved on before they could ask more, leaving them space to stitch their own conclusions. 2 days later, the local paper ran a photo from the gala. Me in the front row at the auction table, laughing at something Mrs. Alvarez had said. My mother's absence in the frame was louder than any headline. Less than an hour after the paper hit doorsteps, my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "You're embarrassing yourself." I didn't reply. Instead, I sent an email to the gala organizers, thanking them for a wonderful evening and including a $500 donation in honor of the unsung heroes who stand by you when others won't. They posted their gratitude on Facebook, tagging me for everyone to see. By then, the cousins, the neighbors, even the church ladies had begun to choose sides, and nothing is louder than silence, especially when it comes from the very people who once gossiped beside you in pews and kitchens and now won't meet your eye in public. The breaking point arrived as a voicemail from my sister. Her voice was tight, rehearsed, brittle at the edges. "Mom's really upset. You've made this a whole thing. You should apologize before it gets worse." I played it twice, then deleted it. Apologize? For surviving alone? For telling the truth without ever raising my voice? No. Instead, I sent her a single photo, the hospital wristband, worn and faded, and a single line. This is where it got worse. Silence answered back. By the end of summer, I had been invited to 2 more community events they were pointedly excluded from, both hosted by people they once considered allies. Their public smiles had tightened into brittle masks. The beauty of a slow unraveling is that you never have to shove. You only withdraw your support, and gravity does the rest. And the fall had only begun. Symbolic revenge isn't loud, it's deliberate. And mine began with an auction paddle. The fall charity auction was the kind of gathering my mother once lived for. Wine glasses chiming, polite applause after every bid, the air thick with curated elegance. I hadn't been in years. This time, I made sure to sit at the center table, flanked by people she used to call our circle. Halfway through the evening, the MC announced the next item, a weekend stay at the lakeside cabin my parents used to rent every summer. The same cabin where Mom dressed us in matching outfits for photos, then spent the rest of the trip reminding me I didn't quite fit the picture. I raised my paddle without hesitation. The bidding went back and forth. $200, $300, $400. At $500, the other bidder dropped out. Sold. The gavel came down, followed by scattered claps, a few knowing smiles, and one curious glance from the mayor's wife. "I thought your family still rented that place," she asked, voice lowered. "Not anymore," I said evenly. "Guess things change." That weekend, I went to the cabin alone. I took photographs, sunlight spilling over the water, steam rising from my coffee, my bare feet stretched across the dock. Each caption read the same. Some traditions are better without the ones who ruin them. No tags, no names, no need. By Monday, 3 texts from my sister and 1 from Mom lit up my phone. "You're being cruel. You know this is hurting us. Take those posts down." I left them on read. What they didn't know was that the cabin wasn't the only auction I'd won that night. Another item, less glamorous, but infinitely more symbolic, was a handcrafted quilt made by the women's shelter downtown. The same shelter I had supported quietly for years, long before my family decided my earnings were theirs to claim. 2 weeks later, I attended the shelter's winter fundraiser and donated the quilt back, this time in my family's name. The director thanked the family's last name publicly from the stage. The audience applauded. My parents weren't there to collect the credit. The photo of me standing beneath the shelter's banner, quilt draped in my arms, appeared in the local paper again. By now, I didn't need to explain. The pattern spoke for itself. I was present, connected, respected. They were absent. It's a strange thing, watching people who once claimed ownership over you lose their grip. They keep reaching, but there's nothing left to hold. And I was about to cut the last thread tying me to them. That thread wasn't money. It wasn't property. It was the last name we all shared. Their mark stamped on every school certificate, every trophy, every utility bill I paid. For years, I believed it was unshakable, part of me. But sitting in the county clerk's office on a gray Tuesday morning, pen in hand, I realized it wasn't permanent at all. It was just ink on paper. The woman behind the glass looked up from my form. "Reason for the change?" I smiled. "Personal." 2 weeks later, my new driver's license arrived. No more family's last name. No more shadow of their claim. I had chosen my grandmother's maiden name, Strong, simple, wholly mine. The first time I saw it in print, a weight slid off my chest. I didn't announce it. I let them discover it the way they discovered everything now. Secondhand. It happened at the bank. I was signing paperwork for my new downtown condo when the loan officer, a mutual acquaintance of my mother's, mentioned it casually over lunch with her. She must have remarried, my mother guessed. My sister corrected her. She didn't. She just changed it. They called that night. 21 missed calls by morning. The voicemails swung like a pendulum between guilt and rage. After everything we've done, you'd erase us like this? This is humiliating. You're making a scene. I didn't reply. Instead, I sent the shelter a new donation, signed with the name they could never touch, never claim, never twist. The receipt appeared on the shelter's social media with a photo of me and the director, the caption simple: "Our community is stronger when we stand by each other." Within 24 hours, it had more likes than any post they'd made all year. Questions began, but not for me. I was untouchable now. They were the ones cornered. Why weren't they there for her? Why weren't they at the hospital, the auction, the fundraisers? The truth was hemming them in on all sides, a trap I hadn't needed to set. That's the thing about quiet revenge. It doesn't roar. It waits. It lets evidence gather until the picture paints itself. And when it does, you don't need to lift a brush. All I had to do was sign my name, my new name. But one thread still dangled. Not for me, for them. A final act that would seal off their version of me forever, the version they had shaped, controlled, and paraded. It would end where they could never deny it, in public. The invitation arrived in early spring, the city's annual Community Awards banquet. I'd been nominated for outstanding service for my work with the women's shelter. I knew exactly who else would be in that ballroom. My parents had never missed it back when the society pages still printed their photos. They used to sit front and center, basking under chandeliers like royalty. This year, I requested my seat be one row closer than theirs. The night of the banquet, the ballroom glittered with glassware and soft jazz. I wore a deep emerald dress that caught the light with every step. To my left sat the shelter's director. To my right, the mayor himself. Halfway through dinner, the host stepped on stage and began the awards. When my new name was called, Marissa Quinn, a ripple passed through the room. A pause, a glance. Eyes darted to my parents, then back to me. I rose slowly, deliberately, and crossed the floor. Applause swelled, cameras flashed, the sound rolling like a tide. The host pressed the award into my hands and gestured toward the microphone. I looked out over the crowd, and directly at my mother. "I stand here tonight," I began, voice steady. "Not because I had everything given to me, but because I learned how to build from nothing. Some of us are fortunate enough to be born into support. Others have to find it along the way. I found mine in the most unexpected places, and I'll spend the rest of my life making sure no one feels they have to go through life alone." The room fell silent, the kind of silence that amplifies every heartbeat. I smiled and raised the plaque high. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught my mother's jaw tighten, her face set like stone. My father stared down at his plate, unwilling to look up. After the ceremony, people approached me with congratulations. Some asked soft, curious questions about the name change, about my work, about my story. I didn't answer everything. I didn't have to. Silence filled in the blanks more effectively than words ever could. The next morning, the city paper ran a front-page photo, me on stage, award in hand, the caption bold beneath it. "Marissa Quinn receives Outstanding Service Award." The image spread quickly, shared online, reposted on social media, framed in the lobby of the shelter. It wasn't fame I wanted. Fame was fleeting. This was something sharper. A razor slicing through the last threads of the person they once tried to own. That old version of me was gone, replaced by someone they couldn't reach, couldn't claim, couldn't rewrite. I didn't send them the article. I didn't need to. I knew they saw it. And for the first time in my life, I understood. I didn't care what they thought. That was the real revenge. Not the award, not the name, not the whispers in the ballroom. It was the freedom of knowing I had already won.